Hi, my name is Adam Shoemaker, and I'm rector here at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Charleston. Back with another edition of Rector's Corner, our first for the new year, and I'm very happy to have with me today LaVanda Brown, who is the Executive Director of the YWCA, to talk to us specifically about MLK observances in the city that the YWCA normally coordinates, and grateful to have you with us. Thank you for making the time, LaVanda.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me.
I want to start by stepping back and just having you say a little bit about the YWCA itself. What is its mission, and what is some of the work that you've been focused on in recent years?
Sure. So our mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, and freedom for all. So that's a mouthful. But so we usually shorten it into our little tagline of empowering women and eliminating racism. Very early on in YWCA's history, it was recognized that the empowerment of women and the women's suffrage movement largely excluded women of color, and that we could not truly empower women collectively without addressing the systemic racism that affected women of color differently than the oppression of women in general. So that's our mission. We've been doing that in the Charleston area for 113 years. And I have been lucky to be and blessed to lead this organization for coming up on 5 years in February.
Congratulations. How long has the YWCA been responsible for coordinating Charleston's MLK observances?
This is our 49th celebration. Miss Christine Jackson, who many people may or may not know, is the first cousin of Coretta Scott King. And so when Dr. King was assassinated shortly after, Ms. Jackson really, it was laid upon her heart to do something in recognition. And so Charleston has been the first, not only in the state, but among the country, to do the celebration of Dr. King long before it was a national holiday. And we maintain to be the largest in the state. So we're still trucking along.
Well, and have the observances evolved over time? I mean, it's a pretty breathtakingly long series of observances, and I always think of you during this time of year because I can't imagine the coordination it takes. But have the observances grown over time?
Oh yeah. So Miss Jackson, I still talk to her today, and she's amazed to see what the celebration has evolved to. The very first celebration was actually a ball that folks came out, and they ate and, discussed and talked about Dr. King. And the very next year, Ms. Jackson was like, we've got to do something different. It's got to be a different type of celebration. And so that's where the Ecumenical service was introduced. The parade was introduced about 10, 15 years later, and as well as the breakfast. Ms. Jackson and several of her board members approached then Mayor Joe Riley about some type of breakfast for the business community to bring, because it had been largely the church and faith and African American community, but the parade and the breakfast really opened up the celebration to include all of the Tri-County.
And normally when we're in person, you have regional celebrations. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So that is one thing we, as we've transitioned to this virtual celebration, the regional sort of area worship services, it was just a difficult lift, particularly because many churches were just figuring out how to do their own work, their own worship, and how to do that virtually, no less add on an additional worship service. But the faith community has been very supportive. So we're really looking forward to the Ecumenical, which is going to bring everyone together virtually. Over the years, the parade has grown. I mean, from a few, 100 people and people lining the streets to several thousand people in the parade, 200 plus units of cars and floats and bands, and then thousands of people lining the streets. And, of course, we've added various youth components like our youth poetry slam and our youth summit. So we'll be anxious to get back in person, but not overly anxious because we want to make it safe. So when it is safe to do so, we will. And I believe there'll probably always be some type of virtual component.
Now, I was going to ask you, how has it been trying to plan this during COVID, and what have been the challenges and perhaps the insights that you've seen as you've moved through the planning stages for this?
Absolutely. I think that, well, the challenges have been largely technological, like just learning and finding the right people to do all the things that we need to make this a great production. I think also the challenge is bringing the heart, and the feeling that we have when we're together, bringing that to your screens is a challenge. But I will say the thing that hasn't been challenging is finding people willing to help. That is something that Dr. King's planning this celebration has just been easy. Like people, volunteers, they're ready to help, people to participate in programs, referring us to, the right technology folks to help us get it done, has really, and I will say incredibly, our sponsors have been incredibly supportive, knowing that things are different and that the benefits that they typically would have are going to look a little different, but still supporting our work is very humbling to me. So that hasn't been the challenge. The challenge has really just been the technology, but the willingness of people to celebrate and pay honor to Dr. King, that hasn't gone away at all.
That's great to hear. I know, LaVanda, that every year you organize the observances around the theme. Can you talk a little bit about this year's theme and why that theme was chosen?
Yes, so restore the dream, repair our world is the theme. We for the last several years, we've had a theme contest where we solicit themes from the community, and then our various committees and program participants vote on the theme. Since I've been here, it's been a clear winner every year. And this year, of course, that was not the case. There was a tie. And the theme that we chose was one of the two. And the morning that I woke up was the morning that we did the press conference for the mayor and announcing our speaker, Anita Zucker, and looked at the poll, and I was like, oh my God, it's a tie. I'm not going to be able to announce this at the press conference, but I didn't have time to think about how am I going to break this tie. So I'm sitting at the press conference, and Mrs. Zucker begins to talk about the Hebrew principle that she and her family lives by and has lived by, which is tikkun olam, and it means the repair of the world. And when she said that, it was like the heavens just lit up for me. I was like, there's the tiebreaker right there. And when she talked about where we are as a country and how repairing the world is necessary, it seemed to be very fitting for where we are. So that's essentially Mrs. Zucker broke the tie. Her and her family's lifelong value system really shone through. And so that's where we are today.
Well, that's a beautiful theme and timely given where we are. And I wanted, LaVanda, to ask you to reflect upon this year, not only the inequality that we've seen with the COVID pandemic, which I think has exacerbated a lot of the inequality we've seen,
yes,
but the continuing racial injustice that we've seen, and of course, what tragically happened last week with the sieging of the Capitol. I wonder what your thoughts are in relation to the life and legacy of Dr. King, and what that legacy has to teach us in this moment, and how we can strive together to restore the dream and repair the world.
Absolutely. So I've been giving that a lot of thought, particularly because my parents were the teenagers that we see now, the young adults that are fighting for justice. And they were around during Dr. King marched with and sat for and were arrested because of the movement. And so we would hear a lot of the stories of the civil unrest and the peaceful protest. See pictures, of people taking to the streets. And in my lifetime, I've not seen the movement take form again as it has just recently. Very saddened by the events that led to that. I really feel like we have been doing this work for so long that we should have been so much further along, that we would not have had to have a George Floyd, a Breonna Taylor, an Ahmaud Arbery to, I don't even want to say wake us up, but jar us, once again. I believe that the young people, and I rely heavily on what our young people have to say, because they're the ones that's going to take, they're going to be here in 49 years talking about, us and what we did.
Right.
But they're also going to talk about what they did. And I believe they are relentless. And I do not believe that they are going to and we can't allow that this new awareness, awakening, whatever you want to call it, we cannot allow what has taken place to not teach us something and not fuel us forward and be relentless about justice. And we've got to take it from the top. I mean, we've got to have our lawmakers, we've got to elect the proper lawmakers to create the type of laws and policies that can change behavior. It may not change hearts and minds, but it can change conduct and behavior. And then we've got to also, on the ground level, have initiatives and have the faith community support initiatives where we can change hearts and minds, because we've got to do both. We got to change policy, we got to change practice, and we've got to change hearts.
Well, and if people, LaVanda, want to get involved in the YWCA's ongoing work, anti-racism work, how can people do that? Sure.
So there are many number of ways. Our website is YWCAGC.org, and there's a whole list of things to do, from just simply following us on social media so that you know where we are and what we're doing, to a $50 membership, which will get you discounts to any of our ticketed events. But also, it means that you're joining us on this mission to eliminate racism and to fight for equity for all. So, and then of course, attending our events, our virtual events, until we get into in-person events, where we really want people to join our Racial Equity Institute, which is officially a training, but it's really a movement. It's really a movement of people who are digging in to do the work of addressing, understanding, and dismantling systemic racism. So that if I could say, if everyone did one thing, I'd say, come to the Racial Equity Institute. It will change your life.
Absolutely. I've done the phase 1 training for the Racial Equity Institute, which was a weekend in a group, and it was powerful to be with that group and to learn alongside that very diverse group of people. And those trainings are able to happen virtually.
Yes. Yep. We've been having them virtually since September.
Okay. Well, that's great. And can you also just say how people can sign up to participate in the virtual MLK observances that are upcoming?
Yes, absolutely. If you go to our website, YWCAGC.org, very first thing you see is going to be how to register for the breakfast, for the Ecumenical as well as to view the parade, which will be aired virtually. It's going to be a video vignette of sorts produced by WCBD of bands and elected officials and corporate sponsors and folks just, giving their well wishes and support of King Celebration. And so that's going to air on the King holiday on that Monday, the 18th, from 12 to 1.
Great. Well, thank you so much, LaVanda, for taking the time to be with us. And thank you for all the work the YWCA does in our community and for the extraordinary work of coordinating this very important citywide, tri-county-wide observance of the life and legacy of Martin Luther King. Blessings in your continued work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.